Today, we're going to talk about someone who was a childhood hero for many of us. But as we grew up, we began to realize just how deep, complex, and at times frightening this character really is. Batman, the Dark Knight. Is Batman just a masked hero? Or is he a symbol that embodies the darkest sides of human psychology? In this video, we'll explore what the Batman mentality really is, why he's called the most human among all heroes, and how his path is sometimes seen as right, sometimes as wrong, and why that matters. Batman's story begins not with a victory, but with a loss that changed Bruce Wayne forever. As a young boy, Bruce witnessed the brutal murder of his parents in a dark Gotham alley. That moment didn't just take away his family, it shattered his sense of safety, innocence, and control. From that night on, fear became a constant companion. But instead of letting fear consume him, Bruce chose to understand it, to master it. He traveled the world, trained his body and mind, and sought answers in the darkest corners of human behavior. He turned fear into a weapon, not just to protect himself, but to become something more, something criminals would dread. The Bat, a creature he once feared as a child, became his symbol, a reflection of the fear he conquered and now instills in others. "I became the Bat," he says, "because bats frighten me, and I want my enemies to share that fear." Over the years, Batman has been portrayed in countless ways, in comic books, animated series, and films by directors like Tim Burton, Christopher Nolan, and Zack Snyder. Each version brings something new, but the core remains the same. A man without powers, relying only on his will, intellect, and relentless determination. Unlike many heroes, Batman never wanted superpowers, because for him, power without pain loses meaning. He chose to remain human, vulnerable, flawed, breakable, because he believes true strength lies in standing tall despite those weaknesses. He was born from fear, and became what everyone fears. Batman's power doesn't come from alien heritage or divine gifts. It comes from pain, discipline, and a vow made by a frightened boy in a blood-stained alley. "No one else will suffer what I did." And from that vow, the Dark Knight was born. Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight is far more than a superhero film. It's a deep exploration of fear, morality, and the cost of justice. Gotham City is portrayed not simply as a city under siege, but as a crumbling society where corruption infects every layer of power, from politicians to the police force. In this world of chaos and moral compromise, Batman doesn't emerge as a traditional savior. He becomes a necessity, not a beacon of hope, but a shadow that holds the collapsing city together. Bruce Wayne doesn't fight to be admired. He fights because no one else can or will. Unlike others who seek power, he chooses the harder path, the one where victory means losing himself more and more with every battle. Every night, he dons the cowl. He's not just facing criminals, he's facing the darker parts of himself. Batman's mission is born out of trauma, but it evolves into something larger. A personal war against a city that continuously tests his moral limits. Harvey Dent represents the opposite. He begins the story as Gotham's White Knight, a man who still believes in the law, in systems, and in redemption. He is hopeful, charismatic, and willing to take risks to restore order, someone the city desperately needs. But Dent's downfall is perhaps the film's most heartbreaking arc. After losing the woman he loves and being betrayed by the very system he trusted, his faith collapses. He doesn't simply become Two-Face overnight. His transformation is a slow erosion of everything he once stood for. It's not evil that takes over him, it's disillusionment. This tragic fall brings to life the film's central idea. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. It's more than a quote. It's a moral dilemma Batman faces daily. Harvey couldn't survive that test, but Batman does, by embracing the darkness others fear. He lets the world hate him. He sacrifices his reputation to protect the symbol of hope that Dent had become. In doing so, Bruce proves that real heroism isn't about being celebrated. It's about being willing to lose everything so others don't have to. The Joker is a force of nature, not a villain in search of control, but in search of collapse. He doesn't want Gotham's money or its power. He wants to prove that beneath the surface, everyone is just like him. Selfish, cruel, chaotic. His crimes are not random acts of terror, but carefully designed experiments meant to expose human nature. He pushes people to the edge just to watch them fall. But what makes him truly terrifying isn't the violence. It's his belief that morality is a lie. In many ways, the Joker is the mirror image of Batman, both born from trauma, both operating outside the law, but with opposite worldviews. Nolan's use of light and darkness, sound and silence, enhances the tension at every moment. The contrast between dense, bright public image and Batman's shadowy existence visually represents the duality of justice. Batman works in the shadows not because he is evil, but because that's where justice often has to survive. Meanwhile, Hans Zimmer's score adds another layer to the film's complexity. Joker's unsettling musical motif keeps us anxious, while Batman's heavy, steady theme reminds us of the burden he carries. What makes The Dark Knight truly unique is that it doesn't offer easy resolutions. It forces its characters and its audience to face hard truths. That sometimes doing the right thing doesn't feel heroic. That sometimes, to protect good, you have to become the villain in the story. When Batman takes the fall for Harvey's crimes, he doesn't just save Gotham's faith. He redefines what it means to be a hero. This is why the film resonates so deeply. It isn't about victory. It's about sacrifice. It shows us that real strength is measured not by how hard you hit, but by how much you're willing to lose without giving in to despair. Batman doesn't win by defeating the Joker. He wins by refusing to break. In the end, The Dark Knight isn't a story about triumph, but about resilience. The ability to hold onto your principles in a world that tempts you to abandon them. To understand Batman is to face a paradox. He is a guardian wrapped in shadow, a man who inspires fear to protect hope. He does not fit the classic mold of a hero. He breaks bones, bends rules, hides in the night. But he doesn't kill. He refuses to take a life. Even when it would be easier, even when it would solve everything. That line is sacred to him. And that's what keeps him from becoming the evil he fights. Batman's refusal to kill isn't just a moral stance. It's survival. He believes that if he crosses that one line, he'll never come back. Killing, even for justice, opens a door he cannot close. Gotham is full of people who have made that mistake, and every time, they've lost themselves. So he chooses restraint, even in the face of unbearable pain, even when vengeance tempts him, even when the law fails. Because Gotham's law often fails. The system is broken. Corruption seeps into every level. Police, judges, politicians. Batman knows this better than anyone. That's why he acts outside the system. Not because he rejects justice, but because he believes the system cannot be trusted to deliver it. He is the answer to a city that has stopped believing in heroes. When the law becomes a weapon for the powerful, Batman becomes a shield for the powerless. Still, this makes him dangerous in the eyes of many. He answers to no one. He sets his own rules. He works in secret, wears a mask, and makes enemies out of both criminals and leaders. That's why some call him a vigilante, an outlaw, an anti-hero. And maybe they're right, but Batman doesn't care about titles. He doesn't fight for recognition. He fights because no one else will. His moral code, his isolation, his self-control, all reflect a deeper philosophy. Batman, in many ways, resembles Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, a figure who rises above conventional morality and forges his own path. He does not seek approval. He does not bow to fear. He does what is necessary, even when it costs him everything, even when it means being hated. And it does cost him. Batman lives in pain. He sacrifices happiness, love, and comfort for his mission. He has no normal life. Bruce Wayne, the billionaire, is just a mask. The real face is Batman. And every night, he chooses that mask again, not because it's easy, but because it's right. His strength isn't superhuman, it's psychological. It's his ability to suffer, to endure, to stand firm when others would fall. But Batman doesn't do this because he sees people as weak or evil. In fact, he believes in their potential for good. That's why he fights so hard to protect them, even those who make mistakes. He gives second chances. He holds back when others wouldn't, because he knows that people, given the chance, can be better. His actions come from pain, yes, but also from belief. Belief that Gotham can still be saved. This constant tension between violence and control, isolation and belief, justice and the law, defines Batman's identity. He is both light and dark, both savior and symbol. He is feared, but he never stops. Because deep down, he knows the city needs someone who doesn't give up. Someone who doesn't wait for permission. Someone who does the right thing, even when it's hard. Batman doesn't kill. Not because he's soft, but because he's strong enough not to. He doesn't rely on others, not because he thinks he's above them, but because he knows the burden he carries is too heavy for anyone else. He doesn't trust the system, because in Gotham, trust can get you killed. So he builds his own rules, lives in the shadows, and becomes the thing that criminals fear most, the embodiment of justice. Is he a hero? Perhaps not in the traditional sense, but maybe that's the point. In a world where true heroes are rare, sometimes the only thing that keeps hope alive is someone willing to stand in the dark, someone willing to be misunderstood, feared and hunted just to protect others. That's who Batman is, a man who walks the edge of darkness not to destroy, but to shield those who can't protect themselves. And in that way, maybe he's more than a hero. Maybe he's a symbol, a promise, a reminder that even when the world falls apart, even when the night feels endless, someone is still fighting. Someone is still holding the line. Someone is still out there, not because he has to, but because he chooses to. The Joker represents something far more unsettling than a typical villain. He is not driven by greed, vengeance, or even a hunger for power. Instead, he is the embodiment of chaos, pure, unfiltered, and unpredictable. He doesn't play by the rules because, to him, the rules are part of the illusion. The Joker exists to expose the fragility of order and the hypocrisy of civilization. His mission isn't to conquer Gotham, but to reveal the madness he believes lies just beneath its surface, and to pull Batman into that madness with him. Unlike most adversaries who simply want to defeat the hero, the Joker wants to unmake him. His goal is to corrupt Batman's code, to make him cross the line he has drawn so firmly between justice and vengeance. Every encounter is a test. How far can Batman be pushed before he breaks? For the Joker, morality is a joke. He believes that under the right circumstances, anyone, even the noblest of heroes, can become a monster. His infamous line, "I'm like a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught one," is more than chaos for chaos's sake. It's a rejection of the very idea that life needs purpose or structure. What makes the Joker so dangerous is not his violence, but his ideology. He believes that life is meaningless, that order is artificial, and that deep down, everyone is just pretending to be civilized. He doesn't destroy for gain. He destroys to prove a point. In The Dark Knight, his experiments in chaos are carefully constructed to challenge people's morality. The two ferryboats scene is a perfect example. He gives citizens the power to kill strangers to save themselves, fully expecting them to make the selfish choice. But when they don't, he's almost disappointed, not because his plan failed, but because it challenges his worldview. Batman, in contrast, is order. He operates by a moral code even in the face of complete lawlessness. He refuses to kill, even when it would be easier, even when it would stop the Joker for good. This restraint frustrates the Joker because he sees it as denial, a refusal to accept the darkness within. He tries to drag Batman into moral ambiguity, to make him see that they're not so different. In this way, the Joker is not Batman's opposite, but his reflection. Both are shaped by trauma. Both wear masks. Both live outside the system. But while Batman channels his pain into structure, the Joker lets his pain dissolve all meaning. Their relationship is philosophical. Batman believes that people can be better, that suffering can be a source of strength. The Joker believes that suffering only reveals the truth, that people are weak, selfish, and ruled by fear. Batman tries to inspire hope. The Joker tries to strip it away. Every time Batman refuses to kill, he reinforces his belief in something greater. Every time the Joker survives, he lives to try again. Not just to hurt Batman, but to force him to see what the Joker sees, a world beyond saving. In many ways, the Joker is the ultimate existential antagonist. He challenges the notion that there is meaning or justice. His laughter is not joy, it is defiance. He mocks the idea that any of this matters. And in that defiance, he becomes more than a villain. He becomes a question aimed directly at Batman's soul. If the world is truly mad, what's the point of your code? And if your code can't save everyone, why keep it at all? This is why the Joker never truly wants Batman dead. He needs Batman. Without him, his argument falls apart. Batman is the constant that makes the chaos meaningful. And Batman, in turn, is defined by his refusal to become the Joker. Each encounter is a dance, one that neither wants to end. The Joker pushes boundaries, forces impossible choices, brings Gotham to its knees, all to see if this man in a cape will finally break. And when Batman doesn't, the Joker laughs again, not because he lost, but because the game continues. Their dynamic is not just about hero and villain, it's about worldview versus worldview. One believes in order, sacrifice, and restraint. The other believes in chaos, impulse, and freedom from constraint. The Joker strips away masks. Batman puts one on to preserve what's beneath. But both are reacting to a world that failed them. Both were reborn through tragedy, and both chose their own way of dealing with it. What makes the Joker terrifying is that he is a mirror to our darkest selves. He represents what might happen if we stopped pretending, if we stopped caring. In that way, his presence is a challenge to everyone. Could you keep your values if everything around you collapsed? Could you stay good in a world that punishes goodness? The Joker doesn't ask these questions kindly. He asks them with fire, with destruction, with chaos. But they linger long after the laughter fades. Because deep down, we know the truth. In a world as broken as Gotham, holding on to your humanity might be the hardest and most heroic choice. There comes a moment in every hero's journey when the cost of doing the right thing outweighs the reward. For Batman, that moment repeats again and again, each time etching deeper into the core of who he is. He doesn't just fight crime, he sacrifices, endlessly. His story is not one of triumph, but of what he gives up to keep Gotham safe. Love, peace, identity, and at times, even the truth. Nowhere is this more evident than in the devastating choice between Rachel Dawes and Harvey Dent. The Joker presents Batman with a cruel dilemma. Save the woman he loves, or the man who represents Gotham's last hope. It's not just a physical test. It's an emotional crucifixion. He races to save Rachel, only to discover he's been tricked into choosing Harvey. The result is catastrophic. Rachel dies, Harvey is physically and emotionally scarred, and Gotham loses its White Knight. But more than that, Bruce Wayne loses what little chance he had at a normal life. This is the pattern of Batman's existence. His mission demands that he puts the city above himself every single time. He buries his desires beneath layers of armor and hides his name behind a mask. He doesn't ask for recognition, and when he's finally forced to make the ultimate sacrifice, taking the blame for Harvey's crimes, he accepts it without hesitation. Sometimes the truth isn't good enough, Alfred says. Sometimes people deserve more. Sometimes people deserve to have their faith rewarded. And so Batman becomes the villain, because being a hero sometimes means doing the right thing, even if the world will hate you for it. In that moment, Bruce doesn't just lose Rachel. He loses the right to explain himself. He becomes a fugitive, not for committing a crime, but for preserving hope. His silence is the greatest sacrifice of all. He chooses to become a symbol of fear, so Harvey can remain a symbol of hope. It is perhaps the clearest illustration of Batman's values, that justice doesn't always come wrapped in applause, and that goodness doesn't need validation. But this balance between right and wrong, dark and light, is never stable. Batman himself is a paradox. A man who wears darkness to protect the light. Bruce Wayne is the real person, but he's forced to live in the shadows of his alter ego. He is both savior and outcast, guardian and menace. This duality is not just a narrative device, it's central to his identity. Harvey Dent's story acts as a painful echo of this balance. Once the symbol of everything Batman hoped Gotham could become, lawful, brave, and untouchable, Harvey's descent into Two-Face is the tragedy of a man destroyed by grief and betrayal. He was the city's best chance at legitimate justice. But when he loses Rachel, when he sees the system manipulated and broken, he becomes the very thing he swore to fight. His duality isn't just visual, it's philosophical. One side clings to justice, the other to revenge. And he leaves the outcome to chance, flipping a coin to decide whether someone lives or dies. In doing so, he gives up morality, replacing it with randomness, a cold imitation of fairness. Batman sees in Harvey what he himself might have become. It's why he takes the fall for Harvey's crimes, not just to preserve Gotham's hope, but because Harvey's fall is too painful a reflection. It's what could happen if Bruce ever allowed his pain to consume him. The city needs to believe that Harvey Dent was incorruptible, because if he could fall, then what chance do the rest of them have? This dance between darkness and light is constant. Bruce Wayne becomes Batman to fight the evil that the system cannot touch, but every step into the shadows threatens to consume him. He must remain grounded in his principles, or he risks becoming the very thing he fights. Alfred warns him of this, reminding him that his greatest weapon, fear, can also become his greatest burden. Yet Batman uses that fear deliberately. He embraces the myth, the legend, the darkness, not for power, but for protection. He understands that symbols can be more powerful than men. While Bruce Wayne could be dismissed or killed, Batman, the idea, can endure. He becomes whatever Gotham needs: a watchful protector, a silent guardian, a dark knight. Even when hated, even when hunted, he does not stray from this path. His entire life becomes a study in restraint. He has the power to kill, but he chooses not to. He has the chance to run, but he stays. In many ways, Bruce Wayne dies in that alley with his parents, and what remains is a life of self-imposed sacrifice. A man who could have lived in luxury but chooses isolation. A man who could have healed but chooses to carry the pain as fuel. Because that pain keeps him honest. It reminds him of the stakes, of the promise he made, that no one else would suffer like he did. And so, the duality lives on. In every shadow Batman moves through, there is light he's protecting. In every lie he allows, there's a truth he's. We live in a world that often feels overwhelming, full of noise, uncertainty, and moments where we question our strength. But somewhere deep within us lies a quiet voice that refuses to back down. That voice, stubborn, resilient, unyielding, is what we call the Batman mentality. You don't need a cape. You don't need a cave or gadgets or a city that calls your name. To walk through life with the Batman mentality means something much deeper. It's about facing your fears, not just acknowledging them, but confronting them with the full force of your will. Fear is universal, but what defines us is what we do with it. Some let it paralyze them. Others, like Batman, learn to stand in front of it and say, "Not today." In real life, fear doesn't always come in dramatic forms. Sometimes it's the fear of failure, rejection, loss, or not being enough. The Batman mentality teaches us to use that fear, not to let it consume us, but to let it sharpen us. Turn it into a tool, a teacher, a motivator. That's what Bruce Wayne did. He took the worst night of his life, the night his parents were murdered, and instead of allowing it to break him, he let it forge him. That level of resilience, that refusal to be a victim of circumstance, is something each of us is capable of. But it doesn't stop at resilience. Batman's path isn't one of vengeance. It's one of principle. He has power, but he uses it with restraint. He has the opportunity to destroy, but he chooses to protect. Why? Because principles matter, especially when no one is watching. The world doesn't need more people with power. It needs more people with conviction. People who stand for something and don't bend when it gets hard. That's the Batman mentality. Staying true to what you believe in, even when it would be easier to walk away. And what happens when the system fails? When justice is nowhere to be found? Batman doesn't wait for someone else to step in. He becomes the answer. Not through violence or chaos, but through action, calculated, deliberate, relentless action. The truth is, systems are imperfect. They break, they falter. But individuals, those who dare to hold the line when no one else will, keep society from collapsing. You don't need to wear a mask to be that person. You just need the courage to act when it matters most. To become Batman, you don't need a mask, you need willpower. That's the essence of it all. The decision to keep going when everything tells you to quit. The decision to do what's right when no one will applaud you for it. The decision to become more than your pain, more than your circumstances, more than your excuses. And maybe, in the end, we're not meant to become Batman. Maybe that's not the point. He's a symbol, not of perfection, but of possibility. He represents the part of us that refuses to surrender. The part of us that gets back up, bruised and bleeding, and still fights for what matters. Batman is a reminder that the greatest power we have is not strength or speed. It's resolve. In our everyday lives, that resolve shows up in a million quiet ways. The single mother working 2 jobs to give her kids a better future. The student fighting through anxiety to chase a dream. The activist raising their voice when it's dangerous to do so. The friend who shows up even when no one else does. These aren't comic book scenes, but they are heroic. And that's the truth. You don't need to be extraordinary to be a hero. You just need to choose not to give up. Sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is get out of bed and try again. Sometimes it's standing up for someone who's been silenced. Sometimes it's choosing kindness in a world that rewards cruelty. Each act of courage, no matter how small, is part of the Batman mentality. And so, as we close this journey, carry this with you. Batman is not just a character. He's a mindset, a standard, a challenge. His story reminds us that even in the darkest of nights, we can choose to be the light. We don't need a cape. We don't need the bat signal shining in the sky. What we need is already inside us. Willpower, courage, discipline, and compassion. Because the world will try to define you. It will label you, underestimate you, and test you. But the Batman within you is the part that doesn't break. It adapts, it grows, it rises. So whenever you feel lost or afraid, whenever the world feels too loud or too cold, remember this. You don't need a cape to be a hero. Sometimes the greatest heroes are those who fight their battles in silence, who choose the hard path, and who protect the light, even when surrounded by darkness. Be that hero. Be someone's Batman.